Canada, to Tampere, Finland, Sydney, Australia, Cape Town, South Africa, and here in this beautiful museum, we have seen, to my mind, an incredible balancing act between recognizing the original vision of the first conference while continuing to support its evolution. To my mind, there can be little doubt that the RWL series, its relationship with the Journal of Workplace Learning, have together made an incredibly important contribution that has basically shaped the field. With that in mind, I'll simply say it's a pleasure to see so many of you again. I'm disappointed that so few of you were at the first conference. Not really. I look forward to hearing your insights, perhaps even your corrections on what I've had to say, but you have to buy me a drink before you correct me. My sense is the dialogue that ensues will be of far greater value than what I've said and formulated up here alone. In any case, we should have plenty of time for such dialogues as we wait for the train to Roskilde. I thank you, and like me, I imagine you're looking forward to both getting on with the conference and hearing from Henning.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. Since it came out that quite few of us have made the whole journey, even more the need is there to see it as such a journey which has come out of an initiative and has been held up by a very informal organization. I forgot to say that Peter is the chair of the International Advisory Committee, which is a self-established and self-sustaining group of people who have made sure that somebody would organize the next conference in this series over the years, and will continue to do so, I hope. Then the responsibility to make a conference locally is on the local organizers, and in this case, based in Roskilde University, we had the help of other Danish researchers, and also from Linköping in Sweden and Leeds, which formed a kind of informal network which has supported in the organization. I will take this opportunity to thank the members of the organizing committee for their work so far, and encourage you to keep up and take the lead also in the conference to come. On the background that Peter has described, of course, we have considered what could we contribute, and I was in the last conference in South Africa, and this very clearly illustrated to me how important it is in an era where international communities of research and academic exchange are growing up and trying to find their shared interest, how important it is then to be confronted with the local conditions and challenges. We cannot match South Africa in maybe not in the organization of it, I don't know, Shirley Walters is smiling, and definitely we have an entirely different situation, but still we've had in mind that we should try to present a local perspective, and this museum is part of it, of course. Peter Ludvigsen already mentioned flexicurity, which is a kind of recognized socio-economic outcome of the social democrat labor market policies, which is even recognized by international economists who are normally tend to be neoliberal, as an efficient way of managing labor market policy. We will have a guest speaker who will talk about this socio-economic structure, and on the whole we would like to draw attention to this, say, social democrat welfare state experience which Denmark shares with the other Nordic countries and not very many other countries. You could say that it's the social democrat societies are under pressure. UK had its new labour development, which seriously change the ideas and the practices of labor policies. And in Denmark we have a neoliberal government with a social democrat guise, which is also attacking really the essential aspects of security systems and labor market regulation. But still, you could say that this history leaves some aspects of institutional arrangements, labor market regulation behind, and not least it leaves some ideas and expectations in the minds of people. So one of the things we would like to bring into this discussion is, of course, not to tell about our nice historical refugee, the late social democrat welfare society, but rather to see it as an experience which should be brought into the present day international discussion about how we can imagine some kind of social and democratic development in an era where global capitalism tends to plane out the differences between countries. This takes me to the second challenge that we would like to bring to the fore. The modernizing societies which are under the influence of global capitalism but also form strong socio-economic factors in global development themselves. On the former level, the BRIC countries form their own international coalition of countries, Brazil, the four countries being Brazil, Russia, India and China, the biggest and strongest economies outside the Western capitalist bloc. Chinese economy will become the second largest economy quite soon, and later, little doubt in my mind, the dominant economy in the world. China has undergone a very strong development of its economic and social system in the last 15 years. So this is of course also defining new areas of research interest. We will have a Chinese colleague, Jian Huang from Shanghai, who will give us an idea about how our field is emerging as a research field within the People's Republic of China on this background. And well, I think we need very much to be aware of the complexity of the world economy and the complexity of the notions of labor and work coming as this community does, mainly from modernized Western capitalist countries as we are. Maybe China is also a good example for the fact that maybe on a world scale the best example today that local history and culture, which is merging with or confronted with the influence from global economy and the consequent global cultural influence, means that this local history and culture is a decisive factor in the practices and organization of workplace and in the understanding of learning in relation to work. You could put it very simple. What are the differences and similarities between Chinese people and Western people, which exposes the fact that people is an important factor in relation to work. Maybe a historical perspective, how was Western people produced as a cultural and subjective entity? This takes me to the third theme we have had in mind, namely what you could broadly call the theoretical problem of subjectivity. In my understanding, we tend to reproduce a historical dichotomy between, say, individualizing psychology, dealing with motives and individual behavior, and approaches of sociology, political science, and also even cultural studies, which tend to neglect psychic dimensions of social interaction, of political engagement, and cultural identities. So what the issue is not to emphasize the individual, but it's rather to say that what we usually conceive in individualistic terms needs to be reconceptualized as a societal and cultural phenomenon. We had in mind to have a lecture dealing with an emerging work domain of increasing interest, namely work in the human services. We had a lecture which will unfortunately has had to be cancelled because Kirsten Weber is ill, which should deal with the gender aspects of these work domains of human services, because they are specific in the sense that they obviously require the subjective engagement of the worker in work. And they have historically been drawing on female socialization as a source of being competent to do this work. But what happens now is that these work domains are increasingly professionalized in their own right, and they have to develop learning procedures and learning arrangements which do not benefit directly from a kind of, say, natural grown gender socialization. So we think this is an area which is important because it's a lot of workers, a lot of work domains, but it's also interesting in the way that it makes obvious something which is sometimes forgotten in work research and learning in work research, namely this subjective involvement of the worker or the learner. It's not just a theoretical problem. I hold it as one of the most interesting theoretical problems, but it's also a political one. Because if we look at work and learning research, it has always been a political research domain. And somehow we have based our political engagement, our justification in class relations belonging to the modern capitalist societies, and also had our hopes for societal effect or output of our research interest in the existing labor movements and in labor activism, in democratic social movements who could act within this class-based society. Living in a time where these external political conditions are shifting because work structures and work relations change, because class relations change, and because some of the organizations and institutions, state institutions as well as civil society institutions, have a different situation. I think it is extremely important also for the self-reflection of this research domain to consider how the motives and engagements of people, of workers, form in relation to their living conditions and their working conditions, and how they are shaped or are shaping political engagement and become more or less democratic factors in societal practice. So in a way we have to make the justification and the perspective of the research domain part of the research itself, namely by not assuming that we know what work is, why workers need to learn, and why they need to hear what we have to say about their learning. Yeah. Finally, I have a short remark on a delicate issue about us being an Anglophone community with a few hangarounds from Finland, Sweden, Denmark, and a few other countries who are not native English speakers. It's a practical issue, of course. It keeps a lot of people from participating because they don't share the English language. But it's also, I think, a limitation for ourselves because it limits our access to certain literatures and certain experiences from outside the Anglophone world. We decided to dare a language experiment at this conference, namely by inviting a German-speaking lecture. We have tried before to organize an informal translation, and it has worked, and we believe that this conference would be patient enough to try to find out what this great scholar and great thinker had to tell in his language. The speaker was Oscar Necht. He's an elderly man, and he has become ill, unfortunately. I enjoy your sound because we felt it as an experiment, but also we like very much this experiment. But he's simply ill. He's been forbidden to travel. We will make a replacement arrangement in which I will try to tell something about why we think that there is something in the German-speaking research and tradition which is valuable to us, and hope to be able to give you a hint about, at least to awake some curiosity about it. But of course I also want to trigger the general consideration about how, not only on a practical problem but also on a reflective level, how we deal with the limitations which follow from being an Anglophone community. We are not the only one. I mean, this is a societal development which takes place all over academia and all over business, which establishes a hegemonial structure of Anglophone networks, which makes it not just an internal but more general intellectual question. Yeah, I will end my welcome here. I hope we will have a real nice and stimulating conference. I have all reasons to believe in it. We have a record of 5 preceding conferences which have been extremely good and stimulating, and also created friendly relations and new political and social understanding between the participants. We will tomorrow meet at 9 o'clock in Roskilde University, which is in train distance, some 20 minutes train rides. And let me just say that the simple way is to leave from the main station of Copenhagen 12 minutes past 8. Then you will arrive in due time if you take care to get out at the station, which is called 3 kroner. It is a Danish word for 3 crowns, referring to a glorious past of Sweden, Denmark, and Norway. That is a station near the campus, and it's far the easiest way to arrive. Now there will be time to have a refreshment, which is badly needed, I think, a snack, and also to pass around in the museum. Your badge will give you entrance to the exhibitions, and you can mix the two activities and all the friendly conversations you want to do in whichever order you like. Thank you.